Noah's consciousness floated through darkness, drifting endlessly. As he floated, he thought, what do people think about when they drown? The good memories? The bad ones? For him, it was neither. He couldn't even remember his own name. There was nothing but darkness, until a faint glimmer appeared. He felt his existence again, like he was being pulled by a string, barely aware of himself. Suddenly, his soul was thrust into countless lives. Worlds flashed by in a blur, each one rejecting him. Each time he was thrown out, flying through the void again, searching for a body to contain him. Over and over, he was reborn. Then he stopped. He flew into a small clearing surrounded by trees, their branches stretching into the sky like withered hands. To his surprise, there wasn't a child or a mother waiting there. Instead, a greasy-haired man knelt on the ground. The man was panting, struggling for breath. He pulled a small gourd from his belt, broke the seal, and drank greedily. But halfway through, the man's eyes bulged in horror. He clutched his throat, dropping the bottle as liquid spilled to the ground. His consciousness faded, and Noah felt his soul being pulled into the man's body. Finally, Noah thought, I found a body that could hold me. He gasped, desperate for air, and it worked. Noah froze, his hands slowly rising to his face. He touched his skin, no longer a ghost. I'm alive, he said, his voice trembling with disbelief. A burst of hysterical laughter escaped him. Tears ran down his cheeks. It had been so long since he'd had a body. Noah, that was my name, he muttered, fragments of memory returning. Earth, the stars, and a feeling of impatience all jumbled together in his mind. I thought I was supposed to lose all my memories when I was reborn, Noah said. Why do I feel like I've been waiting for something for so long? But what? Looking around, he realized he didn't know where he was. Where am I? Who am I? He paused, noticing a strange taste in his mouth. Did this guy just drink poison? He crawled over to the gourd the man had been drinking from and picked it up. There was a small piece of parchment tied to it. To Noah's surprise, he could read the strange writing on it perfectly. Thanks for everything, Magus Vermil. I hope this healing potion helps you out. Noah frowned, judging by the man's expression before he died. It seemed the potion had done more harm than good. I'll worry about that later, Noah muttered. Around him, the corpses of strange, furry creatures lay scattered. They looked like monkeys, but they had large fangs and long claws. These things didn't make the wound in Vermil's chest, Noah muttered, inspecting the man's body. Whatever did this, I hope it's long gone. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. Drool dripped onto Noah's head. He turned around, coming face to face with an enormous, grotesque monkey. It screeched, a horrible sound that tore through Noah's ears. The monster stood twice as tall as Noah, with long, gangly arms and clawed hands. Its small, beady eyes glared at him, and jagged fangs jutted out from its mouth in every direction. What the hell is that? Noah thought, frozen with fear. The creature charged at him, and he turned to run. Where did I get reborn? He wondered, hearing the heavy thumps of the monster's steps closing in behind him. Panic gripped him as he realized it was gaining on him. Am I going to die again? After just coming back to life? No. He turned to fight. As the monster's claw came rushing toward his head, panic surged through Noah. But before he could think, his body moved on its own. His hands rose into the air, and white lines danced before him, forming a strange pattern. A burst of wind shot from his palms, slamming into the monster's paw. Noah stumbled, feeling drained as the energy left him. He stared at his hands, stunned. I just did magic, he whispered. I can do... Before he could finish, the monster's other claw came down, slashing through his head. Pain exploded in his mind, and his soul was ripped from his body once more. His lifeless corpse crumpled to the ground. Floating above his body, Noah stared down at the mangled remains. The pain faded now that he had no body to feel it. Well, that was fast, Noah muttered. Getting killed that quickly has to be some kind of record. As his soul floated away, memories came flooding back. What happened after my last life? I remember, Noah said. I always believed there was something after death, but I never expected it would involve waiting in a line. A very long line leading somewhere unknown. Noah noticed a faint, purple crack in the distance and realized it hadn't been there before. This place is so boring, I'm starting to imagine things, he thought. All he could do here was imagine and reflect on his life, not that it had been remarkable. He'd never married, never had kids, and never got the chance to grow old. His degree felt useless, but he loved teaching music. There were moments with his students that he didn't want to forget, but fate had its own plans. The same job I loved forced my colleagues to give me their sick days just so I wouldn't get fired, he thought bitterly. And in the end, it hadn't mattered. Years passed, hundreds, maybe thousands, and Noah lost track of time as he moved forward, one step whenever the line allowed. Eventually, he started climbing a set of stairs, continuing his journey upward until he finally reached the top. He now found himself before a beautiful woman. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen, dressed in flowing silk, with a lake of shimmering silver water behind her. She wasn't human. He could tell that much instantly. The woman looked at him and spoke. "Noah Vines," she said, as if reading from something invisible. "You died at the age of 26. You were an influential figure to 84 of your students. Many prayers have been sent up for you." Well, at least my life wasn't a total waste, Noah thought. "On the contrary, yours was a life well lived," the woman said. "Are you a god?" Noah asked. "I am Renewal," she replied, "one of the goddesses of reincarnation. Drink from the waters of life, and in losing the memories of your current life, continue to your next. A new body will soon be born for you." "Wait, I won't remember anything?" Noah had asked. But before she could answer, a shower of stars rained down, tearing the peaceful scene apart. Noah had no idea what was happening. Out of nowhere, a muscular man appeared. "Renewal, my beautiful flower. I've missed you," the man said. He then started to dash towards her. "You must enjoy being defeated," Renewal said as she prepared to defend herself. The man swung his weapon at Renewal, and upon impact, the ground shook as they clashed. The man managed to slice through Renewal's shield, cutting her arm, and her blood spilled into the water. Noah knew he had to escape. He threw himself forward, desperate to get away from the battle of gods raging nearby. "Is that all, Renewal?" the man taunted. "Try harder if you want me to take this seriously," Renewal replied. "For you? With pleasure," the man said, vanishing and reappearing in front of Renewal, swinging his weapon. Renewal managed to dodge and cut off the man's arm, which fell into the water. Watching from a distance, Noah realized he couldn't waste time worrying about losing his memories. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The muscular man growled in fury, his blood mixing with Renewal's as both spilled into the water. Seizing the moment, Noah ran while the gods prepared to clash again. With a determined look, he muttered that he was done with waiting. When the gods collided behind him, the force flung Noah into the water. As he sank, he accidentally swallowed some of the blood that had spread from the fight, Renewal's blood and the blood of her opponent. Back in the present, Noah's soul soared through the air. "Do I have to wait in that line again? Is it still there?" he wondered. But before he could think further, something yanked him down. A purple ribbon wrapped around his throat, pulling him back into the world. His eyes flew open as he gasped for breath, clutching his chest with his heart racing. He was alive again. "What the hell is going on?" Noah muttered, looking around in confusion. Noah found himself trapped in an endless cycle of death. He had died dozens, possibly hundreds of times, and each death blurred into the next. Every time he returned, it was to the same spot, back near the mysterious gourd. The agony was nearly unbearable, but it was still preferable to the monotonous hell of the endless line he had once been stuck in. Eventually, he managed to retrieve Vermil's belongings, but his magic never fully returned. He could still sense it deep within him, lurking in the foggy corners of his mind, but it remained just out of reach. Despite this, with each death came valuable experience. Noah couldn't explain why, but the monkeys he fought always used the same few attacks. Over time, he learned the exact way their muscles tensed before they lunged, the subtle shifts in their eyes that betrayed their movements, and how they telegraphed their claw strikes. Though he wasn't stronger or faster than before, he grew more adept at avoiding their blows, and he wasn't about to waste the chance to learn from each encounter. He had spent millennia waiting in that torturous line, and now his patience had finally run out. He prepared to fight another monkey. The monkeys continued their relentless assault, but Noah dodged their attacks effortlessly, refusing to let them best him yet again. It didn't matter how many times they killed him, he thought. He only needed to kill them once. Noah noticed a group of men flying through the air on swords. Seizing the opportunity, he called out for help, hoping they would hear him. Spotting him, one of the men expressed shock at his condition, asking what had happened. Noah couldn't afford to tell the truth. He didn't know what Vermil had been doing here or even who he was. He quickly made up a story, claiming that a monkey had struck him on the head, leaving his memories scrambled. He introduced himself as Vermil, unsure if the lie would hold up. The men looked at each other, then got ready to attack. Noah hastily showed them a badge, hoping it would prove his identity. One of the men, recognizing the badge, remarked that Noah, now Vermil, was a teacher at Arbitage. They wondered aloud if a Hellreaver had been responsible for his condition, but quickly dismissed the idea since Noah was still alive. It was more likely, they concluded, that he had been attacked by a lesser creature. One of the men, named Frederick, offered Noah a ride back to Arbitage. As Noah cautiously stepped onto the back of Frederick's flying sword, he asked if it was safe. Frederick reassured him and told him to hold on tightly as they soared through the sky. As they flew, Noah's thoughts raced. If Vermil had been a professor at Arbitage, then people there would surely know who he was. Whoever had tried to kill Vermil might even be among them. He realized he had to be careful, as he wasn't any safer now than he had been in the forest. But before long, they arrived at Arbitage City, home to one of the greatest runic academies on the continent. Frederick welcomed Noah back, calling him Professor, as they landed. Despite the danger, Noah thought that this situation could work in his favor. A magical academy was the perfect place to blend in and perhaps even learn the magic he was missing. All he had to do was stick to his story about memory loss and avoid drawing too much attention to himself. Frederick reassured him that he was in good hands at the academy and that if anyone could help him, it would be the people here. Noah silently worried, though, that if they discovered he wasn't really Vermil, he might end up being experimented on for eternity. A man slowly approached them, his expression skeptical. He commented on hearing rumors about Vermil's return, adding that he thought Noah had simply been absent, perhaps deliberately. Noah immediately sensed something off in the man's tone, finding it almost condescending. Internally, he bristled at the insinuation but responded aloud with an excuse about memory loss, mentioning an injury to his head. The man looked at him more closely, noting his injured appearance and questioning whether Noah even remembered who he was. Feeling put on the spot, Noah took a guess, asking if the man was a doctor. This only earned him an exasperated sigh and a comment that made it clear his guess was far from the truth. The man introduced himself as Richard, explaining that he specialized in healing runes. Moving with practiced intent, Richard placed his hand on Noah's chest, ready to investigate the supposed injury. Noah's thoughts raced, fearing that Richard's magic might reveal his true identity. Just as Frederick seemed ready to say something, Richard cut him off, muttering that Noah was human. Richard added, with a note of suspicion, that he was merely probing Noah's condition and remarked on how oddly jumbled his mind seemed. Trying to keep his voice steady, Noah suggested that rest was probably all he needed to recover from the memory issues, even though inwardly he worried if Richard might somehow detect that the real Magus Vermil was long gone. Richard, however, seemed unconvinced, stating that only time would reveal if further recovery was possible, and remarked on the situation as tragic. Noah's suspicions about Richard deepened. He couldn't help but wonder if this man, with his disdainful attitude, might have been involved in poisoning Vermil. After thanking Frederick for escorting Noah, Richard assured him that his efforts would not go unrewarded. Frederick replied that any honorable man would have done the same and wished the Magus luck. Richard then informed Noah that he would notify the headmaster of his return and his current condition. Observing Noah's hesitance when asked if he remembered his room, Richard sighed, resigned to leading him there personally. Once they arrived at the room, Richard inquired about Noah's key. Noah only shrugged, unable to produce it. Muttering to himself, Richard activated a rune to override the lock. As the door opened, they saw the room in disarray, with papers scattered across the floor. Richard stated that he would arrange for someone to check on Noah soon and suggested he stay in the room until then. Noah thought to himself that Vermil certainly wasn't a clean freak as he noticed the mess around him. Richard had just left, slamming the door on his way out. Noah couldn't shake the feeling that Richard knew more than he let on. Looking around the cluttered room, Noah muttered, "What a mess." His attention was drawn to a key left on the table. Puzzled, he wondered why Vermil would leave it behind. He sat down, determined to make some sense of the clutter. "So I'm a teacher again. I can work with that," he mused, spotting a note apparently written for a student. The message read, "Meet me in my room an hour after class if you want that extension." Shocked, Noah slammed the note back down. The last bloke in this body was a creep. No wonder someone killed him, he muttered in disgust. Glancing over a schedule on the desk, he noted, "And he was a magic teacher? How am I supposed to teach magic if I can't even do it myself? This is a mess." Just then, a knock came at the door, and a man's voice called out, "Hello?" Noah turned as the man barged in, introducing himself as Braden. "Vermil? It's Braden. I heard you were back. What happened out there?" he asked. Noah, improvising, replied that he'd taken a bad hit and was dealing with some memory loss. Braden scoffed, "Idiot. Can't say I didn't warn you. Just how bad is that memory loss? The Linwicks would be furious if you got injured and didn't receive proper treatment." Noah was relieved Braden didn't seem hostile, especially considering his intimidating physique. Braden informed Noah he had a class in an hour, offering to find a substitute if his memory loss was too severe. Noah started to accept the offer, but Braden interrupted, insisting they could also get someone to examine him more thoroughly. He mentioned he'd be leaving later that day and wouldn't be around for a few months, so he couldn't cover for him. Noah quickly thought, "The last thing I want is someone rummaging around in my mind." He assured Braden, No, that's all right. I can handle it, just a little memory loss." "Where's my class again?" Braden eyed him with exasperation. "Gods, has it been that long since you actually taught? Building a room 2. Don't be late. And remember, if your students flunk out, it'll reflect badly on the Linwicks. I trust you still remember what that means." With that, he slammed the door behind him. "Right, thanks. I wouldn't miss it for the world," Noah replied. As he gathered himself, his eyes fell on a paper on the floor that read, "Face Stealer Group spotted in the area." It warned that persons should be wary of colleagues or students that they recognize that speak or move in an odd manner, especially those who have been missing for an extended period. Meanwhile, back in the forest, a shadowy figure stood in the fog, dragging one of the bodies Noah had left behind. Noah was sprinting through the campus, cursing under his breath. "Damn it, I'm late," he muttered, frustrated by the labyrinthine layout. "This campus is a maze," he grumbled, hoping his students wouldn't decide to leave if he wasn't there in the first 15 minutes. Bursting through a door, he glanced around, uncertain. "Is this it?" he wondered aloud, taking in the neglected classroom. "Looks like no one's taught here for ages. And why is my classroom so far out here?" He caught his breath, huffing repeatedly, realizing he hadn't seen a single student or teacher on his way over. "I wonder if there's anything useful in here," he said, scanning the room. A light tapping of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. "Someone's coming," he whispered, as a girl walked in, holding a blue orb and looking surprised. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I believe I'm here to teach class," he replied, hoping he sounded convincing. Just then, another student entered, glancing curiously at the girl. "Who are you talking to, Isabel?" he asked, only to freeze in shock at the sight of Noah. "Whoa, I've never seen him show up for class." Noah stared back, incredulous. "These are my students?" he thought, surprised at how close they were to his own age. The boy nudged Isabel, smirking. "Do you even think he knows class started 40 minutes ago?" Isabel scoffed. He probably thought he'd have the room to himself. Trying to keep his composure, Noah thought, "Just gotta play it cool, not give myself away. I can win over a couple of students," he said confidently, determined to make the best of the situation. With a forced smile, Noah told them they were going to have an amazing class. Isabel was immediately suspicious, asking him what he was trying to pull. Noah denied any hidden agenda, insisting that he was just there to teach. Isabel and the boy, Todd, exchanged glances, commenting that Noah seemed different from how he usually acted. Noah explained his odd behavior, telling them he had taken a blow to the head and was suffering from minor memory loss. But he still had a class to teach, and he instructed them to sit down, as it seems that the rest of the class wasn't coming. He noted inwardly, with a mischievous grin, that he would be getting answers to all his questions from these students. Todd told Noah that there was no rest of the class. It was just him and Isabel. They were the only two students stuck with Noah. Undeterred, Noah told them that two students were better than none and asked them to take their seats. The two students were skeptical. Todd pointed out that they were the same rank as Noah, and Isabel scoffed at the idea that Noah was going to try and teach them. Todd remarked that Noah only had the job because of his connection to the Linwick family, a powerful name that Noah had heard mentioned several times before. Isabel tried to strike a deal, suggesting that if Noah gave them a free pass on the exam, they'd stay out of his way. Todd chimed in, hoping Noah would let things slide as they had been before. Noah, however, was firm. Despite being untalented, he suggested that perhaps he had some experience they lacked. Isabel arrogantly dismissed the idea, but Noah wasn't backing down. He had their attention for the rest of the class, and he intended to use it. The students tried to challenge him, bringing up some scandal involving a student he had seduced, but he cut them off, asserting his authority as their teacher. While he understood why they didn't respect him, considering Vermal's reputation, he demanded that they treat him with the respect due to a teacher. With that, he turned to the blackboard and announced that they would be talking about runes. As if to punctuate his statement, the class board broke down with a crash, much to Noah's surprise. Regaining his composure, Noah asked the students what runes were, but his students were unimpressed. Todd gave a basic, almost mocking definition of a rune, stating that it held energy and allowed someone to cast magic. Noah, however, wasn't satisfied. He pointed out that the definition Todd gave was the most worthless possible. He wasn't asking what a rune did. He wanted to know what it was. The students were taken aback by his response, unsure of what he meant. Noah seized the opportunity, feeling smug as he realized that neither of them truly understood the basics. He explained that to properly use a tool, one must understand it at its most fundamental level. Neither Todd nor Isabel could answer his question, admitting they didn't really know what a rune actually was. Noah praised their honesty, telling them that understanding begins with realizing what you don't know. He then asked them what magic could do, to which Isabel replied, "Anything." Noah challenged her, asking if magic really had no limits. Todd quickly chimed in, mentioning that you could only use one rune at a time and that it couldn't bring people back to life. Noah agreed, noting that magic had its limits, and emphasized the importance of understanding the building blocks of their craft. In his mind, Noah thought that magic could definitely bring people back to life. Todd looked at Noah in disbelief, struggling to comprehend. Nobody truly understood runes, yet Noah seemed to suggest otherwise. In response, Noah simply remarked that runes remained largely a mystery and a topic of continual study. He added that anyone claiming full knowledge was either lying or delusional, then turned to the board and began sketching a rune. The faint scratching sound filled the room as he drew, emphasizing that there was always more to learn. Todd and Isabel watched in shock. Todd, eyes wide, questioned if the rune was Noah's own, to which Noah replied that it was indeed a rune. Their astonishment grew as they realized he'd drawn it right before them, exclaiming in disbelief. Noah, realizing he may have overstepped, explained that it had been in his book, quietly acknowledging to himself that he shouldn't have revealed it so openly. Todd, still incredulous, asked if they were allowed to see it without any cost. Isabel muttered to herself, suggesting Noah might have indeed hit his head. Noah kept his composure, responding that a teacher's duty was to inform, though he knew he had to proceed carefully in questioning them. He then asked if they could identify the rune, prompting a response that it was a rank 1 lesser fire rune. The mention of ranks surprised Noah, who began writing on the board as he sought clarification on what made it a lesser rune. Todd eagerly explained that lesser runes couldn't hold as much magic, had poorer control than greater ones, and were overall weaker. Still, he argued, lesser runes weren't necessarily ineffective and proceeded to launch a flame that shot through the ceiling. Noah encouraged Todd with a nod, though internally he was panicking. Clearing his throat, he asked the class if anyone could now define a rune, but the students remained silent. He continued, emphasizing that acknowledging one's ignorance was the first step to understanding, urging them to speculate on a rune's purpose if they had no concrete answers. Todd suggested that runes could be combined and used to imbue items, though he sounded unsure. When Noah pointed this out, Todd admitted he hadn't expected an interrogation. Noah assured him with a slight smile that he'd adjust to it, assigning them the task of thinking about a rune's composition for next class. Turning to Isabel, Noah inquired about her method of accessing her runes. She hesitantly explained that she imagined sinking into her soul, but wasn't sure if there was more to it. Noah encouraged her to explore this further, inviting her to focus on her runes and observe what occurred, promising to do the same. As Todd and Isabel closed their eyes, Noah joined them in trying to connect with his own runes. Internally, he reflected that finding magic within his soul shouldn't be difficult, despite lacking meditation experience. Suddenly, he sensed a shimmer and found himself surrounded by familiar runes, 5 wind runes and 2 ash ones. Recalling Todd's mention of combining runes, he likened it to harmonizing notes but remained acutely aware of his limited knowledge. Without warning, a sharp headache jolted him as a massive purple rune appeared behind him. Stunned, he whispered in shock at the sight of what seemed to be an 8th rune. The image stirred a distant memory, reminding him of the man who was fighting renewal. A few hours after class, Noah was in deep concentration. Focusing hard, he pictured the rune in his mind, visualizing the magic he wanted to summon. Slowly, he felt it activate. Excitement washed over him as he realized his runes were working again. His enthusiasm was quickly tempered when he wobbled, feeling drained. He reminded himself that all energy, even magic, had its limits. Still, the rush of progress thrilled him. There was so much left to learn, but at least he was on the right track. Later, Noah walked through town, trying to avoid the stares and whispers of those around him. It was impossible to go anywhere without feeling eyes on him, but as long as he looked like he was in a hurry, he hoped no one would stop him for conversation. He noticed the wary glances people gave him and was relieved no one seemed ready to confront him, at least not yet. As he passed, students murmured behind his back, heightening his anxiety about Vermill's reputation. The memory of the note Vermill had written to a student lingered in his mind, making him wonder if someone might still be out there, waiting to finish the job on Vermill. Approaching the library, Noah pushed the door open, immediately struck by how much nicer it was compared to his classroom. He marveled at the grand space, wondering why his own workspace was so neglected in comparison. Spotting the professor-only section, Noah figured that was exactly where he needed to be. Joking to himself, he wondered if professors here got free coffee too. Noah approached an old man behind the counter, asking for some books. When the man inquired about the kind of books he was looking for, Noah requested something basic, an introduction to runes. Before the man could respond, a woman approached, clearly unimpressed. She scorned Noah, stating that the Linwick family had clearly fallen far if he was seeking such basic knowledge. Her contempt was evident as she questioned why Noah wasn't using his family's resources to find what he needed. Noah, quick on his feet, responded that using Linwick resources for something so mundane would be a waste. He pointed out that everything he needed was available in the library. This answer seemed to catch her off guard, but she wasn't entirely convinced. She mocked him, saying it was no surprise he was looking for beginner-level books. In her eyes, the fact that he was a professor at rank 1 was pathetic. The woman's finger sparked with magic as she shot a spell at Noah, insinuating that his previous misdeeds, blowing girls' skirts up with his magic, weren't easily forgotten. The old man, alarmed, tried to stop her, but it was too late. Noah fell, realizing that Vermil had been a detested figure. No wonder everyone hated him. He struggled to think of a way to respond, but all he could muster was a brief apology, claiming he was trying to move on from old, poor habits. Moxie sneered at Noah, dismissing him with a taunt, saying no one would be foolish enough to believe him. She added that he probably fit right in with his family's reputation, casting him as a disgrace. Noah felt a sting but kept his focus. She clearly disliked him and seemed interested in these face stealers. Reflecting on Vermil's personality, Noah mused that Vermil might have deserved her attitude. He even considered that she might have been the one who tried to kill him. Shifting the conversation, Noah whispered to the old man about the books. The scene switched to Vermil's room, where Noah sat at the table, pondering the workings of his runes. That massive rune still loomed in his mind, something he felt was far from ordinary. But he knew that drawing attention to it would be risky. He delved deeper, wondering why Vermil, who came from a moderately powerful family, possessed a bunch of low-quality lesser wind runes. For someone of his background, better runes would be expected. The thought led Noah to reconsider his own runes. 5 wind runes and 2 ash runes. Despite both being wind runes, they felt distinct, as though each were a separate vessel or power source. The more energy they contained, the stronger they became. Killing monsters had somehow filled these vessels with energy, an effect he'd noticed back in the forest. He realized that even nearly empty, the ash runes held more power than his nearly full wind runes. This understanding fueled his resolve. If he wanted to grow stronger, he'd need to replace his lesser runes, fill them with energy, and explore how to combine them. Feeling a surge of confidence, Noah decided to test his wind rune. He stacked up a bunch of papers, activating the rune. He managed to cut through the stack. Wind magic was starting to make sense to him. He even wondered if he could fly once he fully mastered it. However, when he tried to channel the ash rune, it remained unresponsive. Frustrated but undeterred, he decided to focus on what was working for now. An idea struck him. He could use wind magic to clean up the mess in his room. With his rune, the scattered papers fluttered into piles. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. He could feel one of his wind runes draining as he used it, further solidifying his understanding of how rune energy worked. Exhausted from the day's events, Noah decided it was time to rest. After cleaning up, he headed for a warm, relaxing bath before bed. The comfort of the bath eased his mind as he contemplated the mysteries surrounding his runes and Vermil's life. Afterward, he rummaged through Vermil's closet, finding nothing but the same set of clothes. At least Vermil had been consistent in his fashion choices, Noah mused. As he brushed his teeth, there was a sudden knock at the door. Startled, Noah considered ignoring it, hoping the visitor would assume he was asleep. But the knocking persisted, growing louder and more urgent. Panic set in. What if it was Vermil's killer, coming back to finish the job? Noah's mind raced. Had he locked the door? The thought barely formed before the door was busted open. Terrified, Noah hid as the intruder slipped on the scattered papers and crashed to the floor. Noah cautiously crawled out of his hiding spot and checked the person's pulse, fearing the worst. To his horror, he didn't feel anything. Was the intruder dead? He began to panic, convinced that others would think he had killed the person. As he was grappling with what to do next, Moxie entered the room. Noah, desperate to explain, blurted out that it wasn't what it looked like. Noah, feeling the weight of the situation, tried to explain himself. He knew Moxie didn't like him and he understood why, but he insisted that she had to believe him. He didn't do it. Moxie, however, was more focused on the body in front of them. She was impressed that Noah had killed it, which confused him. She referred to the girl as it, which took Noah by surprise. When he pressed for an explanation, Moxie seemed almost amused, asking if he was trying to be funny. Noah was bewildered by how calm she was, wondering why she was acting like this was just a normal situation. He asked for clarification, wanting to know who the person was. Moxie called him an idiot, opening a bottle of liquor before revealing that the it in question was a face stealer, shocking Noah. Noah, curious, asked Moxie what a face stealer was. Moxie replied sharply, accusing him of ignoring the warning that had been sent out. As he recalled a note he'd skimmed in a stack of papers, she questioned how he'd even known to kill it if he hadn't realized what it was. Noah sheepishly admitted that it had slipped and essentially killed itself. Moxie took a drink, calling him a lucky fool as she settled in comfortably. Noah thought to himself that she certainly made herself at home. Continuing, he asked if a face stealer meant it had taken over someone's body. Moxie confirmed, explaining that it probably belonged to an irrelevant person like a maid. Noah wondered aloud if the original person could have survived, to which Moxie clarified that the host had already been dead, reminding him that face stealers could only inhabit dead bodies. Noah internally noted the need to be cautious with any bodies he left behind. Moxie mentioned that it was strange for a face stealer to come after him in his room, as they were typically drawn to magic, and no one was reckless enough to use it indoor as they could damage the property. Noah winced internally, recalling that he'd been practicing magic earlier. Moxie then requested that he keep the whole ordeal private, as she couldn't bear the embarrassment of a face stealer slipping past her, only to be taken down by him. Smirking, Noah agreed, but not for free, which immediately offended her. He quickly clarified that he only wanted to ask questions, explaining that the blow to his head had left him with fuzzy memories. He genuinely needed help filling in the gaps in his memory. He realized too late that his phrasing had sounded incredibly creepy, especially given Vermill's notorious reputation. Moxie, still irritated but willing to help, gave him 10 minutes to ask his questions. Noah's first concern was about the monsters at the academy. He asked why there were monsters on the school grounds when it was supposed to be safe. Moxie explained that while it was safer at the academy, it wasn't entirely safe. Face stealers were a recent problem, but far from the worst threat they had faced. Monsters, much like humans, were drawn to runes and the energy they held. Noah, curious, asked if the energy they gained from killing monsters was what attracted them. Moxie confirmed that monsters also craved the power stored in runes, noting that the exchange of energy went both ways. She added that some monsters carried master runes, which were far more powerful. As Moxie threw a handful of seeds onto the body of the face stealer, vines sprouted and enveloped the corpse, absorbing it entirely. Noah watched in awe, taken aback by the sheer power of her magic. Moxie, unimpressed by Noah's ignorance, chastised him for asking such basic questions, ones that even a child would know the answers to. Noah explained that his memory was fuzzy due to the head injury, trying to downplay the gaps in his knowledge. Moxie mocked him further, teasing that even face stealers were smarter than him. Noah ignored the insult, pressing on with his next question. He asked if there were any monsters with master runes nearby. As Moxie walked around the room, she said that she hopes not, and told him that the monsters vary in strength, but the strongest ones could likely level Arbitage. She said that the closest is the Hellreaver, and it could pound him into paste. It was a rank 2 monster, possibly approaching rank 3 with a master rune. Noah made a mental note to avoid that creature at all costs. Noah wondered aloud why none of their books mentioned anything about creating new runes. Moxie replied skeptically, saying that if the Linwicks had figured out rune-making, she'd be interested to know. She then teased Noah, questioning why he'd even ask with all his research documented in his grimoire, though she hinted that she found his research less than impressive. At the mention of a grimoire, Noah recalled Vermil's book and thought he needed to examine it more closely. Curious, Noah asked if runes could be learned just by studying a drawn symbol. Moxie explained that a drawn rune alone was powerless. While runes stored energy, they also needed an energy source to begin storing anything. Noah likened it to needing an initial investment to get started, comparing it to jump-starting a car. Moxie nodded in agreement, clarifying that creating a rune within one's soul required both the rune's energy and its drawing, hence why runes and rune combinations were guarded secrets. Knowing how to combine runes safely was crucial, as it could otherwise lead to devastating consequences. Satisfied, Noah moved on to a final question, asking Moxie if she knew of anyone who disliked him. Moxie wryly suggested that it would be simpler to list those who did like him. Amused, Noah accepted her answer and promised to keep their conversation confidential. Moxie seemed surprised by his straightforwardness but accepted his promise, remarking that the debt was settled as they shook hands. She then teased that she thought he'd ask her advice about the upcoming class exams, but Noah assured her he would manage. As Moxie left, Noah mentally added the exams to his growing list of research tasks. She gave him a final warning, reminding him not to mention the face stealer incident and hinting at unpleasant consequences if he forgot. With a dramatic slam of the door, she advised him not to test her. The scene then shifted to Noah as he approached a towering building. Looking up, he muttered to himself, realizing that this was the place. He'd overheard professors discussing a magical public transit system, but it wasn't quite what he'd expected. Nonetheless, he resolved to press on, entering the building and climbing the stairs up to the 30th floor. After the long climb, he finally reached a room housing the transport cannon. An old man greeted Noah cheerfully, asking where he wanted to go. Surveying the cannon, Noah found it less than confidence-inspiring, yet he asked the man to send him to the Scorched Acres. The old man asked if he was heading out there for teaching, to which Noah replied vaguely. The man noted that it was good Noah had chosen the cannon this time, reminding him that he had tried to warn him about it last month. It guaranteed a 24-hour return. Noah admitted that ignoring that advice had cost him a concussion, and he wondered quietly about Vermil's motives for venturing there, as it had ultimately cost him his life. Noah then asked if the cannon was indeed safe. The old man confidently assured him it was and urged him into the cannon, mentioning that there was a bit of a line waiting, though it was usually quiet. Once inside, Noah hesitated, asking what he should do next. The man simply instructed him to squeeze. As the cannon powered up, Noah started to panic, shouting that he didn't think this was safe and begging to be let out. Amused, the old man reminded him that he usually enjoyed this part. As Noah braced himself, he mused that, even if the cannon did kill him, at least he'd come back. But maybe he should have left his gourd behind. With a triumphant shout of up, up, and away, the old man fired Noah out of the cannon. At the Linwick estate, Braden entered a dimly lit room to speak with his father. Standing in the shadows, his father asked about Vermil. Braden explained that Vermil had been acting strangely, but his father didn't seem surprised, calling it an improvement from Vermil's usual displeasing self. Braden tried to offer an optimistic view, suggesting that perhaps Vermil was getting closer to completing his mission, but his father doubted it. Regardless, he added coldly, Vermil would serve his purpose, both in life and in death. Meanwhile, Noah was soaring through the air, his body surrounded by blue energy, as he hurtled toward the Scorched Acres. Just before hitting the ground, the energy dissipated, and Noah dropped face first into the dirt. Frustrated, he muttered that the cannon was far from perfectly safe. As he got up and started walking, Noah surveyed the burnt and dead landscape, commenting on how nothing had changed since his last visit. He reminded himself that he had nothing to fear. Pain was temporary, and the cannon would bring him back in 24 hours. With determination, he thought that by the time he was done, the monsters here would learn to fear him. He ventured deeper into the forest, feeling it was deserted enough to practice safely. Struggling to climb up a tree, Noah reached the top and was relieved that no one had witnessed his less than graceful ascent. Taking out Vermeil's grimoire, he flipped through its pages, searching for something more interesting than wind magic. Vermeil had amassed a vast collection of runes, nearly 100, but Noah wanted something unique. He dismissed the flame rune as too basic, the plant rune after recalling his disastrous attempt at caring for a succulent, and the shadow rune for being too edgy. Water, light, electricity, and metal all were rejected. He needed something that would allow him to apply his knowledge from Earth. Even though he didn't remember much about building nuclear weapons or complex chemicals, Noah was a music teacher and knew that certain things resonated with him. Finally, he found what he was looking for: a greater vibration rune, rank 1. Vermeil had dismissed it as useless because it only shook things, but Noah saw potential. With strong enough vibrations, he could cause tremors, quakes, and resonant frequencies, possibly even bringing structures down. This was the angle he had been searching for. Noah decided to replace one of his wind runes with the vibration rune. Although the ash runes were his strongest, he still didn't know how to use them, so he wasn't ready to mess with them yet. Carefully, he dismantled one of his smaller wind runes, watching as it slowly faded away. Then came the challenging part: rebuilding it into something better. Concentrating hard, he manipulated the particles from the old rune, shaping them into the new vibration rune. Finally, he succeeded in forming the rune, though it barely had any energy. For now, he would still rely on his wind runes. But with this new rune, it was time to hunt some monkeys and get a little revenge. Noah soon spotted a monkey feeding on the body of another. He called out to attract its attention, and as the monkey turned toward him, Noah activated his wind rune, swiftly chopping the monkey's head off. Pleased with his success, he frowned when he realized that the energy gained from killing the monkey barely filled his runes. Joking darkly, Noah hoped the monkeys weren't endangered, as he planned to kill many more. Perched in a tree, Noah scanned the area for his next target. He spotted a group of monkeys and noticed that one of them resembled the type that had killed him before. This would be the real test. Leaving his gourd in the tree, Noah observed the monkeys for a moment. It almost seemed like they were communicating, which unsettled him. But after a brief pause, Noah reminded himself that they had killed him first, and his anger returned. He attacked with his wind rune, quickly decapitating one smaller monkey and slicing another in two. The bigger monkey, however, remained standing. Noah taunted the large monkey, asking if those had been its friends or just its next meal. The monkey dashed toward him, and Noah launched another wind attack, but the creature dodged it easily. As it closed in on him, Noah fired off another blast, but the monkey dodged again. Frustrated, Noah realized that hitting a moving target was much harder than it seemed. The monkey was now face to face with him, slashing at him with its claws. Noah dodged the blow but stumbled, and the monkey leapt toward him to finish the job. Noah recognized the monkey's move from before, thinking it would slash with both hands just like the last one he had fought. He felt confident that he could predict its next attack. But as the creature descended on him, Noah found that even though he knew what was coming, he wasn't fast enough to react. His body crumpled as the monkey struck, and Noah's soul began to leave his body. Damn it, Noah thought as he hovered over his fallen form. I knew what it was going to do. I just wasn't fast enough to react in time. I need to keep training. Looking down at the scene, he saw the monkey approach his body. Oh God, no. Please stop that. Don't eat my face. That's disgusting, Noah said. 12 hours later, Noah walked back to face the monkey. He was well aware that each death brought with it a splitting headache, which also prevented him from using magic. Reflecting on this, he noted aloud that the headaches seemed to last about 12 hours. As he approached the monkey, he prepared himself to attack. The monkey shrieked in anger and leaped at him. Anticipating its moves, Noah thought about its usual attack patterns. When the monkey slashed at him from the sides, he ducked, dodging the attack. Then, as the monkey prepared for an overhead strike, Noah leaned to the side to avoid it with calm precision. Finally, as the monkey readied a horizontal attack, Noah struck first with his wind rune magic, decapitating it in one swift blow. Watching the body fall, he remarked that all the monkeys fought in the same predictable way, making his task much easier. Soon after, Noah returned to the transport cannon. The old man greeted him, starting to ask how the trip went, but was taken aback by Noah's battered appearance. "Is this really the best way to travel?" Noah asked, clearly worn out. The old man expressed concern, asking if he was okay, to which Noah reassured him that he was uninjured, though he had forgotten about the quick return. The old man winked and mentioned that Noah must have used quite a few healing potions. Noah simply agreed, thanking him. As he left, Noah mused that he'd bring a spare set of clothes next time. Noah sat in his classroom, waiting for his students, noting they were late as class had started several minutes ago. Hearing footsteps approach, he remarked to himself that at least they were earlier than the previous class. Progress. As Todd and Isabel entered, Todd confidently pointed out he knew Noah would be there, while Isabel, surprised, asked how he was so sure, since Noah hadn't shown up the day before. Todd dismissed her question, prompting her to pay up on their bet, which she did. Noah, curious, asked if they actually had class that day, wondering if he might have missed something by going out to Scorched Acres. Isabel clarified that class was every other day and had been scheduled for the previous day, which he'd missed. Noah asked why they were there, and Todd explained that they usually used the classroom as a hangout spot since it was generally empty. Apologizing for interrupting their hangout, Noah suggested that since they were all present, they might as well make up for the previous day's class, adding that learning together was a good way to spend time. Todd and Isabel fell silent. Noah cleared his throat and asked how their homework had gone. Todd admitted that he couldn't figure it out and had stress eaten instead, while Isabel said she had thought about it but still didn't understand. She asked Noah to give them the answer. Noah, to their surprise, told them that he didn't know the answer either. He explained that if it were easy, they'd have the answer by now. It was something they had to figure out for themselves. Frustrated, Isabel asked Noah why he made them think about the answer if he didn't know it himself. Noah replied that she had answered her own question. It was to make them think, and thinking was never a waste of time. Turning to the board, he introduced the main question for the day, focusing on the importance of good runes. He asked if it was true that they were limited to 7 per level, and Todd and Isabel nodded. He asked what happened when they advanced to the next rank. Todd explained that they would try to combine all 7 runes into a single, stronger one. If successful, they could handle absorbing or combining more complex runes, progressing from general ones like fire or wind to specialized ones like frozen mist. However, Isabel warned that if the combination failed, the runes could shatter, leaving a person crippled until the soul healed, a process that could take years. She added that this was why effective combinations were closely guarded, and the intent behind the combination was crucial for success. The more one understood, the greater the chances. Noah reflected that Vermel's family likely had an impressive rune collection, though he doubted reaching out to them would be wise. After about 30 minutes, Noah wrapped up, summarizing that runes were like buckets, with lesser runes being smaller than greater ones. When all 7 were filled, they could merge into a larger, more capable rune. Todd and Isabel agreed with the analogy. Noah asked if that was all there was to runes, but they remained silent. He noted that they didn't need to answer yet, ending the class there to avoid overwhelming them. When they reconvened, he promised to continue the discussion. Todd and Isabel exchanged a look, with Isabel commenting on how drastically Noah seemed to have changed. Noah dismissed the remark, saying it was hardly relevant and that he actually liked himself now. Todd agreed, noting that Noah almost seemed respectable. Noah considered this to be progress. As the students began to leave, Noah stopped them with one last reminder, confirming their next class in 2 days. Isabel replied that if he insisted, it would indeed be in 2 days at the same time, addressing him as Professor. Noah thanked them and reminded them to be on time, since being late was his job. He added sternly that they should be prepared, as he wasn't done with either of them yet. A little later, as Noah walked out of the classroom, he held his head, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle in. He thought to himself that he needed a break, wondering if repeated death could cause this kind of fatigue. With a faint smirk, he mused, wishing he had WebMD to consult for answers. 2 days later, Noah sat at his desk, staring off into space as he reflected on the last few hours of his day. He still had some time before today's class, but the headaches from using magic had become a persistent annoyance. He wondered if it was from the strain of magic itself or the paranoia creeping in from knowing Vermeil's killer was still out there. As these thoughts swirled in his head, he caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure in the window behind him. Startled, he turned quickly, but there was nothing there. He muttered to himself, questioning whether it had just been a trick of the light or the result of too many sleepless nights. Shaking off the eerie feeling, Noah refocused. No matter, he said to himself. Let's see if yesterday's training made any difference. He activated his vibration rune, hoping to see some progress. Placing his hand on the desk, he felt it start to shake. Items scattered, and he scrambled to catch them before they fell. He hadn't expected it to work that well. Pleased but curious, he contemplated his other runes. If vibration and wind worked fine, then why was ash still giving him trouble? An idea popped into his head, and he grabbed a candle and some paper. Lighting the candle, he burned the paper, watching it turn to ash. Afterward, he activated the ash rune, grinning in excitement. He couldn't create ash, but he realized he could control it. How had he not noticed that before? Playing around with the ash, Noah came to a revelation. Runes didn't create elements, they controlled them. He decided to test his newfound control, gathering the ash and attempting to fire it at the candle. But nothing happened. Disappointed, he realized it was still just ash, and unlike wind, it didn't cut. Noah considered that the strength of a rune likely depended on the energy stored within it. This explained why Vermeil kept several weaker wind runes. It was easier for him to use those rather than focus on building up to the powerful ones. Fortunately, Noah had only discarded one wind rune. Otherwise, he might have been left without a reliable way to fight. But there was still the matter of the massive purple rune in front of him, and he didn't understand what it was. Unsure and hesitant, he thought it might be foolish to mess with it, given that he didn't even know how it worked. But the curiosity gnawed at him. Maybe just a touch. Floating closer, he reached out and touched the rune. A flash burst out, and suddenly, Noah saw the man who had been fighting with Renewal earlier. The man approached a centipede-like creature, which lunged at him. With one powerful attack, the man split the creature in two. Runes poured from its body, and Noah was stunned as he watched the man pick up one of them. The rune was labeled Insectoid Armor. Noah's mind raced. If he could memorize the rune, could he replicate it? The man then shattered the rune. Noah realized he wasn't simply destroying it. He was splitting it apart. As the particles from the rune gathered once more, the man formed a new rune and presented it in his hand. Noah understood. The rune had revealed its function. Sunder, meaning to split. It had torn the monster into its components, but its power extended beyond that. It could also split runes. The realization thrilled Noah. Unlike typical rune combinations, which were like baking a cake where ingredients couldn't be unmixed, this power allowed him to uncombine and retrieve the original components intact. He could now test combinations infinitely, unafraid of locking them in place. Excitedly, Noah exclaimed, but then remembered the time. He was going to be late. Deciding not to meddle with Sunder just yet, he dashed out of his room. He needed to be far stronger before he could handle such power safely. But if combinations were the key to a new form of magic, he'd just discovered a master key. He realized he had left his door open. Reminding himself to lock it next time, he recalled an incident with a face stealer, chuckling to himself. He finally arrived at the classroom, where Isabel greeted him with her usual bluntness. "You're late," she said. I know. I'm sorry," Noah replied. "You said you wouldn't be late," Isabel pointed out. "Actually, I said being late was my job. But I'm here now, so it's all good," Noah responded with a grin. Todd jumped in with some questions. So, what's the lesson plan for today? Imbuement? Potential combinations? The meaning of life? Noah shook his head, amused. I'm afraid not, Todd. Nothing so grand. Today, I was actually thinking we'd go on a little field trip. At the training grounds, Todd looked around in disbelief. He couldn't believe that this is where he really brought them. Isabel voiced her frustration, pointing out that Noah didn't even know the answers to his own questions. How could he possibly train them? But Noah clarified with a smirk that he wouldn't be doing anything here. They would be sparring against each other. Todd rolled his eyes, convinced that Noah was once again dodging his responsibilities. Isabel, however, seized the opportunity to taunt Todd, suggesting that he was just scared he'd lose again. Angered, Todd shot back, reminding her that their last match had ended in a tie. Isabel responded coolly, saying that he should have no trouble tying her again. Noah watched their exchange with satisfaction, cheering them on with a grin. Yeah, that's the spirit. At the training grounds, Noah and his students prepared for sparring, each wearing a shield badge designed to create a protective barrier against magical attacks. These modified badges, however, only functioned within the training grounds. Todd, full of confidence, asked Isabel if she was ready to handle the intensity. She smirked, replying that the biggest threat he posed was burning their dinner again. Todd shot back that she looked like dinner, but Isabel dismissed his remark as lame, telling him to save his banter for when Vermil wasn't around. Annoyed, Todd urged her to get started already. As Noah watched from the sidelines, he observed the rings on Todd's fingers. They were generating fire. He realized Todd had cleverly found a way to bypass the limitations of his fire rune by using those rings. Meanwhile, Isabel activated her rune, and an energy sword began to form from her chest. Noah was both impressed and bewildered. Plasma? What kind of rune was that? And how were they both using magic without displaying their runes? It made Noah wonder if he could do the same. Todd charged at Isabel, his attacks wild but powerful. Isabel blocked his strike, pushing him away. Noah couldn't help but be concerned about how intense the fight was becoming. He hoped they wouldn't injure each other. Isabel taunted Todd, telling him he had strength but no precision. Todd, eager to prove himself, launched a barrage of fireballs. Isabel dodged most but narrowly avoided one. Todd, determined, fired another, forcing Isabel to block, causing her sword to fly out of her hand. Noah thought this was the end of the match. Isabel leaped at Todd, charging with fierce determination. Noah watched her in confusion, wondering why she was still attacking. As she came closer, Todd realized the threat and reacted, cursing under his breath. She seized the opportunity, declaring that he was wide open, and conjured another sword, which caught Noah by surprise. Todd managed to block Isabel's strike, though her attack slammed forcefully into his shield badge, making it gleam. He noticed the intense look in her eyes, something he had seen before, and the shield began to crack under the pressure. With frustration, he fell to the ground as the shield shattered. Standing over him, Isabel challenged Todd, questioning if he'd call this a tie too. Todd responded with irritation, admitting his dislike for her magic. He started to explain, hinting that her win was due to something else but trailed off, insisting he almost had her since she had dropped her sword. Isabel retorted that she dropped it on purpose, and Todd replied skeptically. They continued their back and forth, each challenging the other's claim, their frustration evident as they faced each other. Noah cleared his throat, breaking the tension, and they both turned on him, demanding to know what he wanted. Noah applauded them, expressing surprise, as he'd assumed from their comments about Vermil's teachings that they could barely cast magic. He realized his concerns about their readiness for the exam might have been unnecessary. As Todd hesitated, trying to ask about the exam, Isabel cut him off, getting straight to the point. She demanded to know if Noah was seriously going to make them take it. Noah questioned her response, asking how they intended to pass without taking the exam. Isabel's frustration spilled over as she reminded him of their previous agreement, pointing out that he had only started teaching them properly a week ago. She added that they had an agreement. They were supposed to get a free pass if they brought Noah what he asked for. Noah, now realizing how corrupt Vermil had been, silently cursed him for making such a deal. He told them that plans had changed, and they would indeed have to take the exam. Todd and Isabel protested, panicking at the thought of being killed in the test. Noah asked them to remind him what the exam was. Todd looked incredulous. "You don't even know?" he asked. Isabel chimed in, explaining that they had to kill a slasher, a deadly and fast creature that would tear them apart if they weren't careful. Noah processed this, but instead of showing concern, he shrugged it off. He told them that if they fought the slasher the way they had sparred, they'd have no trouble. Slashers, while fast, were predictable in their movements. Isabel, disbelieving, snapped back that it was easy for Noah to say since he wasn't the one who had to do the fighting. Todd, equally skeptical, accused Noah of having likely cheated his way through the exam, just like they were trying to do now. In response, Noah revealed that he had killed many slashers on his own, causing the two students to pause, taken aback by the claim. Todd remained doubtful. Isabel chimed in, sarcastically suggesting that the only way Noah could have faced a slasher was if it had been restrained for him by his family. Internally, Noah lamented the loss of respect from his students but resolved not to let them down, even if it was Vermil who had originally failed them. Noah then announced that he had made up his mind. They would train for the next few weeks. If, by the time of the exam, they still lacked confidence, he would allow them to cheat without requiring any bribe. This decision surprised both students, especially when Isabel agreed to it, catching Todd off guard. When Todd questioned her, Isabel explained that they had little choice. If they ever hoped to become stronger or perhaps even to kill, then they had to stop relying on cheating. Noah, taken aback by Isabel's slip, wondered aloud if he had heard her correctly. Isabel, undeterred, gave him an ultimatum. He had until the exam to convince them. If he failed, they would walk away. She warned him not to get too pleased with himself, as she still considered him an awful professor. Noah, surprisingly, agreed with her sentiment. Several hours later, Noah was in the scorched acres, taking down a slasher with ease. He had killed 3 in a row, and he was getting used to using his magic without having to visibly activate his runes. He realized he just had to imagine the runes in his head, which was incredibly convenient. He reflected on how easy it had become to kill slashers. Once you learned their patterns, they couldn't surprise you anymore. He mused that maybe there was a drill sergeant monkey somewhere training them all to fight the same way. Suddenly, a rock slammed into Noah's head, sending him flying backward. His body hit the ground hard. From the shadows, a monkey emerged, looking toward Noah's fallen body with predatory intent. The creature approached, licking Noah's body before starting to eat him. Noah's hand, now in spirit form, rose from his body. His spirit was cracked, his form in agony as he floated up. He screamed in pain, wondering what was happening. His thoughts raced. I'm already dead, so why does it still hurt so much? In the morning, the sound of birds chirping outside Noah's window woke him as he tried to sleep. He quickly yanked the curtains shut, irritated by the light. His headache was unbearable, and he muttered to himself, wondering if dying so often was taking a toll on him. He thought about whether he had a limit and if the constant deaths were becoming too much to bear. Frustrated, Noah got up and shouted at the birds outside, but as the sunlight hit him, he turned away, complaining that it burned. We now switch scenes and see Noah in his bathroom. He reflected on his recent battles, realizing that despite having infinite chances to fight, the monkeys he faced were still stronger than him. He worried about Todd and Isabel, who weren't as lucky and wouldn't come back if they faced a dangerous monkey like the one that killed him. The weight of the situation was overwhelming. He washed his face and continued thinking about his struggles. He regretted not being reborn as something less complicated and dangerous, like a slime. But before he could finish his thought, he saw a reflection in the mirror. A slasher. Shocked, Noah attacked it with his wind magic, but when he turned around, there was nothing there. He muttered that he must be going insane. Noah considered how constant death and fighting were affecting his mind. He sighed, deciding he needed a drink to ease his thoughts. After pouring himself a glass of liquor and downing it, he began to plan. On a piece of paper, he listed his priorities. 1. Cure my headache. 2. Fill and upgrade my runes. 3. Train Todd and Isabel for the exam. 4. Find out who wants me dead. He noted with a touch of sarcasm that worrying about an assassin was at the bottom of his list and decided to focus on the headache first. He remembered the strange cracks that had appeared on his soul after a recent death and wondered if they were related to the pain. As he floated around, he noticed more cracks forming in his soul. They were large and concerning, but as he watched, the cracks began to heal on their own, though slowly. He realized the damage had been accumulating, especially from his early days in Scorched Acres. It would take weeks to heal completely, but at least it was fixing itself. He realized that each death might be damaging his soul, and that the damage from his first few days in Scorched Acres could have been disastrous if he hadn't learned to manage his deaths better. In one of the holes, there was a mysterious eye that glared at Noah. After crossing off his first task, Noah noticed that his vibration rune felt stronger. He wasn't sure how much more it needed to be fully upgraded, but he appreciated the progress. He reflected that his current life was far better than the monotony of teaching back on Earth. The third task on the to-do list posed a greater challenge than expected. Todd and Isabel were given instructions to dedicate the next week to training and sparring, all in preparation for their journey to Scorched Acres. This afforded Noah a bit of time to plan and reflect. However, the Chuckers introduced complications, though complications might be an understatement. A more accurate term would be a rock. These creatures were relentless, and attempts to defeat them proved futile. 2 of the 4 times, they managed to kill Noah before they were even seen. Fortunately, encounters with Chuckers were limited to the deepest parts of Scorched Acres. This meant that training Todd and Isabel on the forest's outskirts would ensure their safety. Each death brought valuable lessons about battling the Chuckers, even as the persistent headaches grew worse. But despite it all, handling them seemed possible. A week later, with the exam approaching, Noah was determined not to fail Todd and Isabel as Vermil had failed him. As he entered the classroom, he noticed he was late again, prompting sharp remarks from his students. Todd dryly commented that they didn't expect anything else, while Isabel asked if he had decided to cancel the lesson. Ignoring their comments, Noah simply replied that he hadn't. Todd asked why Noah cared so much about training them now, and his words made Noah reflect on his past as a teacher. He remembered his music students, the ones he never got to see succeed, and the regret he felt for not being there to witness their growth. Determined not to let the same thing happen again, he vowed to help Todd and Isabel succeed. Todd wondered if Noah had heard him, while Isabel noticed Noah smiling. With a smile, Noah responded that he cared because it was his job, then urged them to hurry as they had places to be. Noah and his students headed to the transport cannon. They met Tim, the quirky old man who seemed delighted to see them. Noah asked Tim to set the cannon to Scorched Acres. "Professor, great to see you again." Tim chuckled as he noticed the group Noah was with. "I see you're bringing some youngins with you this time? Going on a field trip?" he asked. "Something like that," Noah replied. "We're doing some training before the exam." "Doesn't sound like a bad idea," Tim said with a nod, clearly approving. He gave Noah a thumbs up. "Cannon's all set. Get in whenever you're ready." "Thanks, Tim," Noah said. He then turned to Todd and Isabel, motioning for them to follow. "Follow in after me, you two. Don't dally too long. Come on, we don't have all day," he added, urging them along. As they entered the cannon, Todd groaned about feeling queasy, while Isabel threatened to stab him if he puked on her. Todd lamented that they were going to die out there, and Isabel bluntly asked how Noah had convinced them to go. Noah, grinning, replied that their passion for learning and self-growth had inspired them to take risks. Isabel deadpanned that he had blackmailed them, to which Noah shrugged, dismissing it as semantics. With a loud shout, Noah called for Tim to fire the cannon, and Tim responded with enthusiasm, sending them off towards scorched acres. Noah and his students stood amidst the scorched acres, surveying their surroundings. He pointed out a small monkey sleeping in a tree, directing Isabel to go first as she was bragging about winning fights and training. Reluctant, she grumbled about the task but steeled herself. Her thoughts raced as she resolved to face the challenge, believing that without trying, she would never grow stronger. Activating her rune, she took out her sword and muttered dismissively about the stupid monkey. Isabel slowly moved forward, her eyes locked on the sleeping monkey as she readied herself for the attack. She inched closer, her movements deliberate. Noah observed her with a quiet confidence, thinking to himself that she should be able to handle this easily. However, he was prepared to step in if things went awry. Without warning, Isabel lunged at the monkey. But the moment she did, the creature, now fully awake, nimbly dodged her strike. The sudden change in the monkey's behavior put Isabel in danger. The monkey then charged at her, claws out. Just as it got close, there was a slice and a burst of blood, but Isabel was unharmed. Noah quickly stepped in and took the monkey down before it could reach her. "Good attempt," Noah said. He added that next time Isabel should try reacting to the monkey's attack. Isabel, still shaken, snapped back, "Are you kidding? It nearly killed me." Noah replied calmly, "You didn't have confidence in your abilities. If you'd fought like in training, you wouldn't have trouble." Todd chimed in. "Easy for you to say. We can't afford shields like the rich kids. We're not like you." Noah frowned, thinking about shields. "You think I have some fancy shield protecting me?" "Of course you do. You're a Linwick," Isabel said. Noah sighed and started to take off his clothes. "Where is it then?" he asked. "I don't have a shield," Todd teased. "You've probably got it in your pants." Isabel turned away and told Noah to not even think about taking his pants off. Noah replied flatly, saying that he doesn't have a shield in his pants. Isabel shook her head in disbelief, calling him dumber than they thought. She asked why he would come to a dangerous place without a shield, pointing out that he was only a rank 1. What if a monkey tried to kill them? Noah shrugged, saying that it was kind of what monkeys did. Todd added that Noah could have at least had a chance with a shield, especially since they were all dead if they ran into a slasher. Noah looked at them seriously and asked if they really thought he would keep them safe just because he had a shield and could buy them time to escape. Isabel and Todd, both annoyed, shouted in unison, saying, "Obviously." The discussion was interrupted by a loud growl, sending a wave of panic through Todd and Isabel. Isabel asked if it was a slasher, and Todd lamented that they were doomed. Noah, however, remained calm, viewing the situation as an opportunity for their first field lesson. With a menacing grin, he instructed the students to watch closely, warning them that this would be on the exam. The slasher emerged and roared as it charged at Noah. It attacked with its claws, but Noah dodged skillfully. He explained that creatures like the slasher relied on predictable attack patterns, making them vulnerable if one could anticipate their moves. Dodging another attack, he prepared a counterstrike and landed a decisive blow, taking the creature down. Todd and Isabel watched in awe, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Noah reminded them that if they avoided getting hit, they wouldn't need shields. Todd and Isabel paused for a moment, the words sinking in, before excitement bubbled up inside them. "So, do I get to go next?" Todd asked eagerly. "What? No, I have to redeem myself," Isabel retorted, determined. "I'm not getting shown up by Vermil." Todd smirked. "Too late. My turn now." The two of them bickered back and forth, the playful tension between them growing, while Noah stood back and watched with a bemused expression. Todd shifted into position, ready to strike, and Noah took the opportunity to give instructions. "I'm not teaching you to rely on your instincts alone. Right now, I'm just teaching you a pattern." With a burst of fiery energy, Todd took down one of the small monkeys with a quick blast of fire magic. As Noah continued speaking, Isabel readied herself to fight. Her hand reached for her chest, activating her rune to summon her sword. Learn how to read your opponents, Noah said, his voice calm but firm. And you'll never need to use a shield as a crutch. Life's not a single run, you know. Isabel's sword gleamed as she swung it with practiced precision, cutting one of the small monkeys in half. I did it! She and Todd exclaimed in unison, both of them managing to take down their opponents in quick succession. Noah praised their efforts, reminding them that repetition was essential to learning. Isabel excitedly recounted how she had dodged the monkey's claws, while Todd boasted about predicting his opponent's moves. Noah told them that mastering this approach would serve them well in the future, especially when they could afford shields but didn't have to rely on them. Todd quipped about spending money on healing potions instead, while Isabel teased Noah about how he spent his wealth. Noah, flustered, remarked that he wasn't aware his family provided him with anything. Internally, he reflected on his Linwick connections and the poisoned gourd incident, wondering if Braden or others had a hand in it. Todd said to Noah, "Of course that's what he spends it on. Only someone with a death wish would fight slashers with no shield and no healing potions." Noah replied, "I don't have a death wish, but I don't fear death." Isabel said, "What do you mean by that?" "Everyone fears death." Noah responded, "Fear is good, we have it for a reason. It keeps us safe, but it also holds us back. If we listened to our fears, we'd never take risks, so no, I don't fear death. I understand it and I use it." Internally, Noah thought, "It feels a little disingenuous for me to lecture about death." All things considered, their conversation was abruptly cut off when Todd noticed something unusual. He called Noah's attention to it, prompting the teacher to turn and spot the source, a chucker. Noah's expression darkened as he realized the gravity of the situation. Alarmed, he ordered the students to leave immediately and not return, no matter what they heard. Isabel hesitated, worried about Noah's safety, but Todd insisted they leave, knowing they would only be a hindrance. Reluctantly, Isabel followed. As Noah faced the chucker, it hurled a rock. Not at him, but at the retreating students. Realizing its target, Noah dashed forward with all his speed, throwing himself in front of the attack to shield them. The rock struck Noah instead, sending him to the ground. Isabel and Todd turned back, horrified, and screamed for their professor as they witnessed his selfless act. Isabel glanced back, worry etched on her face, as Noah was sent hurtling into a tree by the monkey's powerful attack. He kneeled on the ground, spitting up blood. Determined, Isabel shouted at Todd to let go of her, but he tried to hold her back, warning her not to interfere. Ignoring him, she called out to Noah and rushed toward him. Noah's sharp command to stop froze her in her tracks. Slowly rising to his feet, he reminded them both that he had told them to run. Todd grabbed Isabel's hand, urging her to come with him, and together, they ran. Noah turned his attention back to the chucker, his resolve hardening as he placed his gourd on the ground. His voice dripped with menace as he vowed to protect his students, no matter how many deaths it took. The chucker hurled a rock at him, but Noah managed to slice through it using his magic. As he assessed the situation, Noah realized his predicament. The chucker's long-range attacks made it impossible to get close, and his aim wasn't precise enough to counter from a distance. But then an idea struck him. The monkey launched another rock, which Noah dodged as a plan formed in his mind. Activating his vibration rune, he slammed his hand into the ground, causing a violent quake to ripple through the area. Trees shook as a little monkey was thrown around. Meanwhile, Isabel and Todd felt the tremors while fleeing. Isabel questioned whether it was an earthquake, but Todd urged her to keep running. Internally, Todd hoped Noah would survive. Back on the battlefield, Noah steadied himself in the dust-filled chaos. Confidently, he declared that he didn't need to see his opponent to fight. He knew it too well. The chucker roared in frustration, and Noah attacked the chucker while it couldn't see him. It then started swinging blindly in the dust, trying to find him. Noah reflected on his experiences with these creatures. They attacked with predictable patterns, drawn to him wherever he went. Yet, there was something deeper, something controlling them. Noah theorized that they were being sent, driven by an unseen force, which explained their peculiar behavior and unnatural presence this far out in the forest. The chucker, agitated, slammed the ground, clearing some of the dust. Seizing the moment, Noah used his wind magic to attack. Its eyes flashed with a strange light and the chucker dodged with uncanny precision. And Noah realized something had changed. The creature's movements became sharper, more deliberate, almost as if another entity had taken control. Suddenly, the chucker launched a barrage of projectiles that tore through Noah's body, sending him to the ground. Reeling from the unexpected assault, Noah struggled to understand what had just happened. Chuckers never moved like this. Noah tried to activate his wind magic, but his wind runes were depleted. The creature approached, grabbing Noah by the neck. His thoughts turned to his students, hoping he had bought them enough time to escape. The chucker then spoke. Its voice was unnatural, and its words hinted at a deeper, malevolent force. Noah was shocked. He noticed the creature's eyes had shifted just before its counterattack, as if it had been possessed by something far more dangerous. As the chucker tightened its grip, it said that maybe this time after he kills Noah, he would stay dead. Noah resolved to use his final rune. He activated his ash rune, drawing the surrounding ash into sharp projectiles. With one last desperate effort, he unleashed the attack. The projectiles pierced through both him and the chucker, bringing the creature down in a devastating blow. As the dust settled, Noah's thoughts lingered on the chucker's voice and its strange behavior. Was it the Hellreaver? The question haunted him as his consciousness faded. Noah's lifeless body dripped blood as he emerged from the darkness, his new form slowly taking shape. Gathering himself, he moved through the wreckage, muttering about the need to find Todd and Isabel. With labored breaths, he reached for a hidden stash of clothing, recalling how his previous set had been torn to shreds. Dressing himself, he pressed on with labored breaths, leaning against a tree as he struggled. The weight of his condition gnawed at him, and he muttered about the importance of staying hidden in moments like this, as the last thing he wanted was for someone to see him die and come back to life. Slumping down against the tree, he reassured himself that Todd and Isabel were capable of surviving until the transport cannon summoned them back. His exhaustion overtook him, and soon the soft sound of snores escaped him. When the transport cannon activated, it brought Noah and his students back. Todd and Isabel shouted in shock upon seeing him alive, their voices filled with disbelief. They peppered him with questions about his survival, which he dismissed with a weary smile and a vague explanation involving luck and healing potions. Isabel asked if that's why Noah told them to buy some healing potions earlier, and Todd wondered if healing potions could mend clothes. Noah simply told them yes, then changed the topic. He asked what happened after they ran away. Todd told Noah that they didn't turn back like he told them to. He said that a monkey saw them running and tried to chase them. Todd boasted dramatically about fending off the monkey, only for his bravado to be met with blank stares. Breaking the awkward silence, Noah dismissed the class and instructed them to continue training until their next session. As he left, Todd wondered aloud if he had said something wrong, while Isabel voiced her concern for Noah's well-being. The scene shifted to a bustling town square bathed in sunlight. Noah dragged himself forward, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. His thoughts swirled with frustration over his worsening headaches and the burden of his unique condition. He acknowledged the growing danger of his inability to die, particularly if someone discovered his vulnerability after resurrection. His internal monologue deepened, reflecting on the hallucinations that plagued him with every death. The people around him seemed distorted, their forms resembling shadowy, featureless silhouettes. As Noah walked, the hallucinations grew more intense, with beastly figures emerging from the darkness, their glowing red eyes fixating on him. Suddenly, he stumbled into a group of slashers and small monkeys, their monstrous forms snarling at him. Overwhelmed, he collided with a massive figure that barked at him to watch where he was going. Instinctively, Noah threw a punch, sending the figure flying. The hallucination faded, revealing that Noah had struck a student instead. The force shattered the student's protective shield and sent them tumbling. The gathered crowd murmured in shock. Noah stood there, his thoughts swirling in panic. If it weren't for his shield, he might have killed the student. Guilt consumed him as he watched the boy fume, yelling in frustration, wondering how his shield had been broken with a single punch. The words escaped Noah in a panicked rush as he tried to explain, but he had no answer. He didn't know what had happened or how it had happened. The student's anger grew, threatening to spiral out of control as he started to shout about what he would do to Noah. But before he could finish his sentence, there was a sudden thud, and an iron leg hit the ground with a heavy clank. An older man stepped forward, his presence immediately silencing the scene. His sharp gaze swept across the situation with an air of unspoken authority. The man spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. He had only been gone for an hour and already the shield had been broken, inside Arbitrage no less. The crowd, sensing the shift, hushed as the man surveyed the scene. This was Professor Silvertide. His commanding demeanor left no room for defiance. The student stammered, trying to explain himself, his voice shaky as he recounted how Noah had struck him with no hesitation, how one moment Noah had been standing still, and the next, he had been trying to tear his throat out. Noah stiffened at the words, the weight of the situation suddenly sinking in. This was bad. He was in deep trouble now. If this went wrong, he could lose his job or, worse, end up in jail. He thought of Todd and Isabel. What would happen to them if he were gone? His mind spiraled into darker thoughts. He was finished. Meanwhile, the student's mind raced as well, terror rising. He was sure Silvertide was going to make an example out of him. He'd be running double shifts for weeks, he thought, trying to prepare for the punishment he was sure would come. But Silvertide cut through their panic with a cold, assessing gaze. He didn't seem focused on the student's accusations, instead looking intently at Noah. His voice was matter-of-fact when he spoke. This man, he said, was a soldier. The way Noah's eyes had hardened in the heat of the moment, the way he moved, he had seen combat. Noah was confused. He was no soldier. He quickly denied it, but Silvertide's gaze didn't waver. If he wasn't a soldier, then what was he? Certainly not a student, Silvertide pointed out, challenging him. Noah hesitated, unsure how to respond. After a beat, he answered, his voice lacking confidence. He was a teacher, Professor Vermil. Silvertide nodded curtly, as if confirming some unknown piece of the puzzle. He snapped his fingers and turned to the student, ordering him to apologize to Noah. The student did so without hesitation, awkwardly bowing as he offered Noah his briefcase, his words fumbling over the apology. Noah stood there in disbelief, unable to process the bizarre turn of events. This was the last thing he had expected. He felt a sharp pain throb in his head, then ran off mumbling an apology for the shield and a hasty excuse as he moved past the crowd, eager to leave. As he left, Silvertide's voice followed him, calling out that they hoped to see him again. Silvertide's words lingered in the air, but Noah didn't stop to respond. Silvertide, clearly thinking aloud, remarked that Noah was interesting and turned to Tyler, asking if he agreed. Tyler, still processing the events, wasn't as impressed. He muttered that interesting wasn't the word he'd use. Later, Noah isolated himself in a dimly lit room, sliding down against a wooden door. He clutched his head, consumed by thoughts of his deteriorating condition. Inside his soul, cracks and holes spread ominously, reflecting the damage within. As he floated in this fractured space, his thoughts turned desperate, searching for answers. Suddenly, a monstrous figure emerged from one of the soul's holes, its fiery eyes locking onto him. The creature growled, and Noah realized the source of his torment. It was the Hellreaver. A knock on the door jolted him back to reality. It was Richard, his voice carrying an air of urgency. "Professor Vermil," he said, "we need to talk." Noah peeked out the door, his expression polite but forced. Internally, his frustration simmered as he wondered what Richard wanted from him. Richard explained he had been asked to check on Noah's odd behavior, mentioning an encounter with Professor Silvertide on the way. Noah acknowledged the mention with a strained smile, trying to mask his discomfort. Richard questioned whether Noah's psyche needed further evaluation, referencing the recent incident involving a student. Noah dismissed the concern lightly, insisting it was just a misunderstanding and that he was fine. Richard expressed his relief, emphasizing that he didn't want Noah's father's attention on him. The mention of his father caused Noah to freeze momentarily as confusion gripped him, but he forced a grin and tried to end the conversation. As Noah attempted to close the door, Richard stopped it with his foot and handed him a small pouch containing his wages from the previous month. Richard reminded him to pick them up himself in the future, making it clear he didn't appreciate being made an errand boy. He also muttered something cryptic about Noah's father, leaving Noah to wonder whether it was a warning or a threat. After Richard walked away, Noah looked at the pouch and started to wonder how much a particular item would cost. Several days later, Todd and Isabel sat in class. Todd nervously tapped his feet, while Isabel anxiously bit her fingernails. Todd's foot tapping continued until Isabel, looking worried, surprised him by asking if Noah was coming. She then wondered aloud if he was still recovering. At that moment, Noah soared through the air on a flying sword and landed on the roof of the class. He called down to Todd and Isabel, surprising them both. He told them to stand back because he was about to fly down. Todd, watching in confusion, wondered if Noah really said, "Fly," while Isabel speculated that Noah must be feeling better after all. Noah steadied himself on the sword and shouted as he prepared for his descent. However, his landing was anything but graceful. The sword wobbled beneath him, and with a loud crash, he hit the ground hard. Isabel, worried, asked if he was okay. Todd pointed out that there had to be a better way to land. Noah grinned, claiming that he was still getting the hang of it, but that the sword was a lot of fun. Todd, looking at the flying sword, couldn't help but comment on its appearance, saying it looked like the cheapest flying sword he'd ever seen. Todd and Isabel then handed Noah a bouquet of flowers and a card. They explained that the flowers and card were for him, thanking him for saving them. Noah was confused at first, but Isabel explained that the card was a token of appreciation. Todd mentioned that the card was his idea. Noah opened the card and read the messages inside. One note thanked him for saving their lives and believing in them, signed by Isabel. Another note from Todd praised him as a total badass. A wave of emotion washed over Noah as he held the card, memories of his past with his students surfacing. Touched by their words, he softly thanked them. Noah then revealed that he had something for them in return. He pulled out a small grimoire and explained that, since they had mentioned not having the resources of a noble house, he wanted to help them. Todd and Isabel stared at the grimoire in awe. Noah handed it to them, declaring that now they did have access to resources. Todd was stunned, unable to believe it, while Isabel questioned if this was some kind of joke. Noah assured them it wasn't and promised to do everything in his power to help them. Todd's face lit up with excitement, declaring that they were going to have greater runes. Isabel warned that Vermel's family would likely kill him for sharing their secrets. Noah, however, shrugged it off, saying what they didn't know wouldn't hurt them. He then instructed them to replace one of their lesser runes with a greater one by the next class. As the students beamed with excitement, Isabel asked why Noah continually stuck his neck out for them. Noah, with a grin, asked how it was any different from a teacher giving a student a shield. Isabel pointed out that families usually paid for those. Noah shrugged again, dismissing it as mere semantics. As Noah turned to leave, he told them he had somewhere to be and instructed them to put the grimoire in his desk when they were done. He added that if anyone asked, they should say he'd forgotten it there. He promised to see them next class and wished them fun with their new runes. Todd and Isabel responded eagerly, thanking him once again. As Noah flew off on the sword, he shouted excitedly, but instead of flying through the hole in the roof, he crashed through a window, sending shards of glass flying. Todd, watching the chaos, muttered that Noah was certainly something. Isabel laughed, remarking that if his family didn't kill him, that sword probably would.